In the immortal words of Linus from the Peanuts, there are three things never to discuss with people.
Religion, politics, and the great pumpkin.
Well, in this video, we're going to rip that band-aid right off as we enter into the vicinity of an area adjacent to a location. The kind of place where RC airplanes don't last forever, even though we think they will. It's time to say farewell to the great pumpkin. One of the questions I regularly get is, where do I keep all of my models? The reality is, I can't keep them all, and frankly, not all of them last as long as I hoped they would. For you see, every model comes with an expiration date, you just don't know when that date is. Even so, there are certain models that I truly hope that I will always have in my hangar. One such model being the Freewing F-4 Phantom. This particular F-4 started out stock, of course, but liking the airplane so much after the initial flights, I opted to do a full refinish on the airframe.
Great pumpkin!
Foam refinishing is something I've shown on the channel quite a bit, and it's definitely a process, but the end result provides an airframe that has scale realism you otherwise wouldn't normally get from a box stock foam ARF. I've also found that with the smoother, stiffer surface you get too, a good flying model tends to fly even better. The model was painted as a QF-4B target drone aircraft that operated out of the Pacific Missile Test Center at Point Mugu. These Phantoms were painted in a unique red-orange color, and this particular airplane carried the moniker Great Pumpkin on its nose based on that. In all honesty, as I was finishing the airplane, I wasn't entirely sure about a red-orange Phantom, but after I finished it and flew it, I immediately fell in love with it, and between the unique looks and the great flight characteristics, it quickly became one of my favorite jets to fly on a regular basis. It is one of those jets that flies wherever you point it like an arrow, unhindered by most things. In the process of the refinish, I installed an 8-cell Jetfan 90 EDF power system which provided fantastic performance with excellent efficiency giving good flight times. Add to that one of my multi-burner simulated afterburner systems, and those tailpipes lit up like a Christmas tree. And so, leading up to this day, it had probably been at least 6 months since I'd last flown the airplane, and I was eager to get back in the saddle to say the least. As I arrived, the wind conditions weren't great, and as the morning progressed, it wasn't getting any better. It might have been a good indication to reassess flying the airplane, but despite my better judgment, I was bound and determined to get her flown. After a couple of ground checks, and a slight detour, what is this?
Well, that's what they call a horse apple. Oh, many different names. We had it in Texas.
That's not the type of horse apple I'm aware of. Although maybe I'm thinking road apple.
Pick it up.
Interesting. Are they edible?
No.
Yeah. They're like durian?
You probably got sap all over your fingers.
Not too bad. It was time to taxi her out to the runway and get her flown at last. The winds were straight cross, but the takeoff went well enough and she was airborne again at last. In the air, the airplane was flying and maneuvering well, but was certainly being bumped around a bit. Not the most pleasant flying experience, but still getting the job done. And so after giving her some fast flybys, a roll or two, and some scale type verticals, it was time for the moment of truth, since landings are always mandatory. Flying over the runway, I dropped the gear in the flaps and headed downwind. It was bumpy, but otherwise so far so good.
Runway.
However, turning base,
Oh no.
the model finally reached its expiration date. I don't know if that was me or it got slow and I was hard in the elevator. I don't know if I dumb thumbed it or what, but oh well.
Go find it.
It was time to find the model and pick up my pride in the process. And after a little reflection, and quite possibly a tear or two, figure out what happened. The model had tucked over uncommanded and become unresponsive, followed by a fairly abrupt pitch up and stall. Was it me? Was there a failure of some sort? Was it both? It was rather curious. Upon closer inspection, the wings and tails fared quite well, with the brunt of the damage being taken by the nose and fuselage. All things considered, it could have been far worse, and it appears that with a new fuselage, the model could be up and running again fairly quickly. In the process of checking the servos, however, I discovered this. So going through checking everything, all of the servos are specking out okay, except the elevator. I discovered in the process of checking things out, looking over the airframe, that the elevator servo back here, the motor burned up. The airplane's powered on, I can overpower the servo easily, and it doesn't respond to inputs much at all. And so the question is, when did that fail? Did that happen in flight? It very well could have, or did it happen as a result of sitting in the brush with pressure on it? You know, a motor servo failure like that indicates pressure over time, but you can put a lot of pressure over a short period of time, or you can be overloading it over a longer period of time to get that to wear out. So that is one variable in this whole equation. Definitely would have explained some of the weirdness, but I was also a bit slow in reacting to what the model was doing, and honestly it wasn't really responding very well to what I was doing anyway. So that's the big question. Very well could have failed in flight. The fact that the servo motor failed would indicate it being overloaded. That could have resulted from years of abuse flying the airplane fast and hard, or it also could have resulted from the crash if there was hard pressure on the elevator while it was in the brush. The model was slow when it tucked over, and I was unable to roll it back level at that moment. I was also late to respond and add throttle to get the speed back up too. Maybe it would have fared differently if I had more speed or was quicker on the response. However, if it was the servo, there was not much that could have been done, and had it not happened that day, it was going to happen at some point in the future, unless I replaced it. And so, in this 2022 Halloween season, we must bid farewell to the Great Pumpkin, for she has arrived in the vicinity of an area adjacent to a location and been re-kitted. Until we meet again, Great Pumpkin, only next time, quite possibly, as an E-model. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you're new to the channel, consider subscribing. Otherwise, be sure to check out this next video. You'll be glad you did. Thanks for watching, and until next time, I'll see you at the field.